Anthony Thomas, he goes the other way and takes the handoff with a couple of blockers. He's in, touchdown. 3rd and 6. Blitz coming. They got 2 men blitzing on the play. Derek Johnson gets there.
London calling to the faraway towns. Now war is declared and battle come down. London calling to the underworld. Come out of the cupboard, you boys and girls. London calling.
London came calling, but the Detroit Lions did not answer. This is the Hindsight 20 podcast, and I'm your host, Jerry Mallory. Thank you very much for listening. This is the first of many, many, many episodes to come where we'll be reviewing all the good, bad, and ugly of our Detroit Lions. So I want to thank each and every one of you for listening, and I want to thank the Detroit Sports Podcast Network for giving me the opportunity to come on here and pontificate about our Detroit Lions. It's going to be fun. And yes, we will talk about the game. We will talk about the Lions. And yes, I will stall for a minute or two as long as I can. But seriously, let's take care of some things. Let's talk about the show. We'll talk briefly about myself. And then, we will talk about the Lions. So the name of the show, like I just mentioned, Hindsight 20. That's what we do. After the fact, we look at what happened, the good, the bad, the ugly. And sometimes we think we have all the answers, but a lot of times we have the answers after the fact. Now, sometimes we have it before too. But a lot of times we're talking about things after the fact in hindsight. The old phrase, hindsight is 20/20. So it really fits too if you think about Detroit Lions history. Hindsight 20, that number 20, synonymous with many Lion greats, including St. Barry himself, Barry Sanders. So there you go with the show and the title, Hindsight 20. You're going to be able to hear this show after every Lions game, so typically that's going to be Mondays. For the most part, they play on Sundays, so you'll hear this podcast every Monday. Now, when they play on Monday Night Football, they might not get a ton more of those next year, but this year they've got another Monday Night Football game. You'll hear the show on Tuesday. For the Thursday games like Thanksgiving, you'll hear the show on Friday. So that's pretty much how the schedule is going to go down. A little bit about myself. Like I said, my name's Jerry Mallory. Some of you may have heard of me before. Perhaps you heard me on the Doc and Jock show last week introducing myself. They let me go on the show and talk a little bit about Lions, Tigers, Red Wings, Pistons. Some of you might also know me from Pride Detroit. I'm still on PrideDetroit.com, still with SB Nation doing video content. Now, if we go way, way back, some of you might know me from actually doing the Detroit Lions podcast years ago with SB Nation and PrideDetroit.com. But for the most part now, I do video, and I'm liking it. I'm loving it. But I'm really loving this opportunity to break into the podcasting world once again. Diehard Lions fan, man. I don't know if this is something to brag about or not. I haven't missed a down of Detroit Lions football now in about 20 years. I'm 30 years old. The first game I saw, watched it on my own. I just cut it on. In my family, it was a big basketball family. I grew up with my mom and my sisters in the heart of Detroit, and my second oldest sister loved basketball. So I watched basketball at a very early age. Now, my dad, he played baseball, a huge baseball guy. So I got my love for baseball from him. But football, I stumbled upon the Lions just randomly, really. I cut it on. It was a playoff game against the Packers. Surprise, surprise, it was a lost cause and a loss for the game, and I've been hooked ever since. Just like you all, I'm a Lion slappy, season ticket holder, diehard, passionate fan, and I've got a lot to say. I've got a lot on my mind, and I think I've stalled long enough. I've tried to say as much as I could to avoid talking about this game, but we've got to. Here we are. So down here in London, the Lions go down 45-10. This game was ugly. And if you ask me, this game was a microcosm of the entire season because there weren't really any redeemable points, any redeemable facets to this game. And it's weird. You're watching this thing. You want to get angry, but you don't get angry. You want to start talking about all these changes that need to be made, but you're just looking at the screen and you're saying, you know what? Screw it. These guys are who we thought they were, to quote Dennis Green. It's a microcosm, though. And the reason I say that is because this whole season has been ugly. We had one good drive, and it wasn't that great. It was a field goal. That reminds me of the Bears game. One good game, and that game wasn't really great. It's a home game against a bad team. We gave up a lead. In the fourth quarter, we were able to come back and win. Great. We avoid 0-16, but by and large, it wasn't that pretty. That was that field goal. We had an opportunity to score a touchdown, didn't get it. Field goal's okay. But other than that, dumpster fire, disaster. And this is what this game was. I'm at the point now where I'm looking at players. I want to see who has heart. Jason Jones made a great point last week. He said, no matter if the fans come or not, no matter what our record is, we're still professionals. We're still getting paid, and we're getting paid handsomely to play a game that we love. So it's important, and I'm going to make sure, this is what he said, I'm going to make sure all the guys on the defense and that defensive line are still playing, giving 100% with all the passion. This season has been so ugly. Now you're going to look at the players. You want to see which one of these guys are giving up, which of the players are kind of mailing it in. And so you're starting to see some of those things right now. It's just sad, man. It's not much to say about this game. We were horrible in all phases. Defense, offense, special teams was nothing to write home about. And to make matters worse, you're down 30 points in the fourth quarter. You decide to still get Calvin involved. You decide to throw the deep ball to Calvin Johnson, and he gets hurt. And I got a lot of thoughts on Calvin, too. Love the guy, but I got some thoughts and opinions about him. Maybe I'll get into some today. If not, hey, we've got a long, long time to go. Beautiful relationship. You, the listener, me, the guy with the microphone. I got some thoughts on Calvin Johnson, what I think about his contract, what I think about his skill, and sometimes what I think about his effort. But all that being said, absolutely horrible. Absolutely no rhyme or reason why you have him in the game that late, and he goes on and injures himself. And so this is just what this team has become, a complete mess, a dumpster fire. Yes, we want to fire everyone. They started with Lombardi. Who will be next? We'll have to wait and see. Just to set the table, we got a few things we're going to do for this show today. Yeah, I'll be giving you commentary. In addition to that, we have a few audio clips from some of the players and Coach Caldwell, which we'll listen to, and I'll give some thoughts about that. We also had some listener questions. Yes, I was able to get out on Twitter. I'm at Jerry Mallory NFL, JerryMallory NFL. I went out to Twitter. I had a petition for questions. Some of you went ahead, tweeted me some questions. We'll answer some of those. I'll have some final statements, some thoughts. We'll talk a little NFL draft. So we're not going to sit here and talk about this game for 45 minutes. This team didn't play hard for 45 seconds. So we're not going to sit here and talk about this horrible game other than we sucked. It was horrible. We went to London early. Maybe we're going to have the edge because we're going to be well rested. We got a new offensive coordinator. We're playing against a team that's kind of struggled. The writing was on the wall. Everything was kind of lining up. The old NFL do theory, you got to win some here and there, right? Everything was lining up for us to win this game, and we lost because we're horrible this year, guys. And I'm starting to debate which one was worse, the 0-16 year, or let's say we win 2 games this year or so. That 0-16 team was bereft of talent. They were so bad. It was clear that they were going to struggle that year. This team a little bit different. 11-5, young talent, new coach, hope springs eternal, and you start off 1-7. Horrible, just horrible. Let's get into some of the comments now. It's time because we're at the bye week, and this guy we're going to listen to first, Jim Caldwell. He may be saying bye sooner than later. It's the bye week for the Lions. It might be the good bye week for him. A lot of people want to see him go bye. They want to get ahead and just let him loose, cut him loose, see him get out of here. Well, he's here for now. He's our coach. And he has some pretty interesting things to say. Let's go ahead and listen as Jim Caldwell talks about this horrible effort from his squad.
Not a very good outing, obviously. I mean, that's an understatement, but we just couldn't get it going early on with a couple turnovers that they capitalized on and took advantage of and scored points. We couldn't get any early. And then we just couldn't get anything going offensively. We just kind of kept sputtering along the way. Ran the ball decently early, but then after a while it got to a point where obviously the running game was not going to be able to close the gap quickly enough.
Okay, I couldn't take any more, guys. I'm sorry. The clip was longer. Not a good effort from your team. We could have played better. We didn't execute. I mean, is this guy even human, man? I'm starting to have my doubts. I'm really starting to have my doubts. Is he human or is he just an android? It's like, dude, understatement of the year. I'm so sick of the guy. The only way I could play this clip without any type of levity is to add the circus music, because this is what this is now. It is a circus. Part of me feels sorry for him as a person because, we want him gone. But he still has family. He has friends. He'll get paid for his contract. But he has a staff that you have to consider. So, a firing is ugly from that standpoint. But at the end of the day, we're fans of the team. We want what's best for the team. We've been rooting for the Lions before Caldwell. We've been rooting for them during Caldwell. We'll be rooting for them after Caldwell. But for him to come out and make these bland statements, dude, you're 1-7. You're about to be out of here. I'm sorry. We got to hit him with the drop. That's what we want from you, Jim Caldwell. NSYNC wants it. Jerry Mallory wants it. Hindsight 20 podcast wants it. Detroit Sports Podcast Network wants it. Everyone wants it. We want you to go. I got another clip, and this one is ugly too. So we added some special effects for this one because I don't want to lose listenership on my first show. Our fearless leader, Matt Stafford. Yeah, he's always good for a good interview, right? He's always got some great points. He speaks his mind. He gives us some real good audio, right? No, of course he doesn't, but we're going to play it anyway. Take a listen, as Matt Stafford, number 9, the fearless leader or the fearful leader. Some guys saying now he's shell-shocked, however you want to put it. Here he is. Let's listen to some Stafford audio.
We obviously don't want negative plays, whether they're sacks or negative runs, wherever they are. But that's what defenses get paid to do, is get after the passer, and negative plays hurt drives, whether it's a penalty, a sack, whatever it is.
Negative plays hurt drives. Great analysis.
As far as, negative plays go. We just weren't able to play well enough in really any phase. You look at offense, defense, special teams, everybody, we just didn't play well enough to win. Anytime you get sacked a bunch, there's different reasons. We can live with physical mistakes. That's a good rush team. They've got good personnel on defense to get after the quarterback. It's just some of the miscommunication stuff that that's stuff we got to clean up. Listen, I play as hard as I can every Sunday. I practice as hard as I can every week. I do that for everybody in that building. That's what I think about. I don't think about the negative side of it. I think about the positive side of it, that I know everybody. I know the work ethic of the guys in there. They're putting all sorts of hard work and dedication into it, and it's frustrating for everybody when it doesn't come out the right way.
Oh, Stafford. I think he went to the school of John Madden. Negative plays hurt drives. You never want negative plays. I mean, what's next, man? We lost the game because we didn't score as many points as Kansas City. Dude, Stafford. You gotta come better than that, man. You can't make a guy be something he's not. So I'm not sitting here saying he has to be some fiery guy, some crazy. Phillip Rivers is pretty fiery. I can only imagine. Tom Brady's been so successful. We haven't seen him at the podium at a 1-7. But I could imagine he would have some choice words that would be a little bit better than. Oh, negative plays are bad. You don't want those. Like, dude, really? Negative plays are bad? You don't want negative plays? I'll give him credit for this. He's saying he's putting everything he has on the field and he's trying hard. And I'll give him credit for that. And I'll give him credit for being tough. Because that offensive line, I don't even want to disrespect the word abysmal. I'd be disrespecting the word abysmal to say that offensive line is abysmal. It's something worse than that. That right side, I have nightmares about the right side. So I can only imagine what Stafford has to go through. There's times where I'm just having a dream about day-to-day life. I'm working, I'm doing something simple, and I have dreams about like Adrian Waddle or Cornelius Lucas protecting me from anything. Maybe they're holding an umbrella for me. I don't know. I just have dreams about them protecting me, and they turn into nightmares because those guys and protection shouldn't be mentioned in the same sentence. Now, Adrian Waddle looked good at some point, a couple years ago, and he's always been hurt. Maybe the ACL is slowing him down, but man, this thing is bad. A good friend of mine, he hit me up after the game. He asked me, is Stafford kind of turning it in? Does he have shock syndrome? You're starting to wonder. Now, you get sacked as many times as you do in the regular season, yeah, you're going to start being wary of the pressure. And so it was a couple of times where he looked like Peyton Manning, kind of going down before he really had to. A couple of moments where he took a sack, looked like if he could have stayed in a little bit and passed the ball, it was an option there, or even throw the ball away. There's a lot going on. And then there's times where he holds on to the ball too long. So I really don't know what to say about Stafford, man. The question is, and feel free to hit me up on Twitter, Jerry Mallory NFL. What are your thoughts on Stafford beyond this season? Or even in this season? I mean, there's some slim possibilities he can get traded. I was looking at that. I think the really only team I think that would take that bait would be like a Houston Texans. He's from Houston. They need a quarterback bad. You never know with the Cleveland Browns. Dallas Cowboys have done stranger things. Not much stranger than trading for Stafford, but really, he's going to be here this year. But what are your thoughts on him beyond this year? And to ask if we need a provision, if we need to get a backup or a draft, a quarterback. I mean, I'm not even going to go there because we know that those things are necessary. But does he fall in that Caldwell category? We look at Caldwell, and that's what you hear. I mean, it's almost like whatever comes out of his mouth now, I don't even hear his words. Not that he says anything pointed, not that he says anything that we care about. Every time he talks, the only thing I hear is that. Is Stafford there? Is that where Stafford is with you? Is he in that NSYNC bye mode? I know Mayhew's there. I know Lewan's there. You want the Fords to be there. But what about Stafford? I think if I had to guess, it's probably about 70-30 move on from Stafford after the season. But I know there's a lot of people that still defend him. A lot of people that say it's the offensive line. I'm of the opinion, and I go back and forth, that you keep him around this year. You strongly consider if it's a trade out there, but if it's nothing that's going to blow you away, so to speak, and with the money that he's making, you don't cut him. I don't think that's smart money-wise. You just hold on to the guy, but you definitely draft someone, and you definitely get a better offensive line, and you roll with him one more year. But that's neither here nor there. I just need to see more from these guys, man. These blanket statements, we don't like negative plays. And it's funny. He prefaced it by saying, well, obviously you don't like negative plays. Like, dude, just because you said obviously, or just because you preface something by saying, as you know, it doesn't make the statement you're going to say after that any less idiotic. You can say obviously, but it's still idiotic because, yes, obviously we know you don't like negative plays. This team just needs to turn things around, and you're looking for leadership. You're looking for guys to show some emotion. This is why, and I've been a fan of Stan Van Gundy, and obviously going 3-0, that helps. And see, I just said the obviously thing like Stafford. But what I really love about their leadership is how open they are, how candid a Stan Van Gundy is. It's the complete opposite with this team. They show no emotion. When they win, they're a little happy. When they lose, they give you nothing. It's beyond frustrating. And so I'm at the point with this team now where, you look and you say, who stays and who goes? And that list is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And I'm at a weird spot too, because part of me wants them to win every game. I've been cheering for this team for so long. I never want to see them lose, but I know what's best. I know that, it's better for them to really just go like 2-14 as opposed to 5-11 or 6-10, because you go 2-14, you get the number one pick. It increases the odds of Mayhew and Lewan and all these changes. And you can hand over to the new regime a number one pick. So I'm watching these games, and I'm just at a weird space. Still don't want them to lose, but winning doesn't really help. It's awkward. We're going to take a quick break. We'll definitely be back in just a second or two. What we want to do at this time is let you know this. Your ad, your business, your product can be placed right here. What I'm talking about in this little section can belong to you. Let's do business. Hindsight 20 podcast@gmail.com. If you want to get some ad. You know how podcast works, the sponsorship thing. Let's get into business. This is a spot where I'll talk about your product. If it's some type of special promotion, whatever is going on, you'll hear it right here. So let's definitely do some business. This is how podcasts run. This is how we're supported. So I can keep doing what I do. You can be the first sponsor for the Hindsight 20 podcast. Again, Hindsight 20 podcast, and 20 is 20 at gmail.com. Let's do a little bit of business. All right, we're back on the Hindsight 20 podcast. That was a little thrice with their song, All That's Left. I was talking to a buddy, just on a quick diatribe. I mean, we got 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to talk about Lions first and foremost, but every now and then we'll get off on a little tangent, especially if it's pertaining to music, big music. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and to me, the classic rock band, I mean, where is it, man? It seems to be dead. We're actually at Guitar Center, and we're looking at some things. And I'm like, dude, the classic, guitar, bass, drum, singer, where is it gone? A group like Thrice, who I enjoy quite a bit. I'm a big music guy overall. Now, he's telling me that, well, it's there. You just got to search for it because it's certainly not on the radio. When you cut on your 89Xs now, you don't get a ton of those classic bands. You get more of the Fall Out Boys, more of the punk. A lot of the rock groups now, so-called rock groups, overly produced. It's a weird time for music right now. Now, rap and hip-hop is king, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. I've always been a bigger fan of your rock, of your alternative, and it just seems like there isn't that band. There isn't that Incubus. There isn't that, Red Hot Chili Peppers, whoever you want to say. And so, oddly enough, the guy at Guitar Center, he started recommending some guys. A group called Rival Sons and a few others. You really got to do your searching and your digging now. Now, the other side of this is maybe I'm just getting old, because when I think about groups and I'm like, man, they just don't make them like they used to. That's something that I used to hear my dad say. Now, I'm 30 years old. Maybe I'm getting to that point where the music is out there, but maybe I'm not looking enough. Maybe I'm just getting kind of set in my ways. Maybe I'm just getting to the point where I like what I like. I like what I used to like. I like the songs that were prominent in my teenage years and my early 20s. And so the new stuff maybe is still quality, but I don't know, man. When it comes to rock, I think hip-hop is doing good. When you got your Kendrick Lamars, your J. Cole's, there's an era of rap where there's still the bravado and the flash, but there's some introspective things. There's some socially conscious rappers. I think rap and hip-hop is in a good spot. But when it comes to rock, correct me if I'm wrong, it just doesn't seem to be there. You cut on your stations, your 89Xs, which you used to hear, your classical, and I'm not even talking about going far as back as like a Led Zeppelin, but just, even 5 to 10 years ago, it seemed like you had more traditional rock bands, and they're kind of going by the wayside. But you come here to talk about the Lions. That was my little music diatribe that I wanted to give you. Now, what we're going to be doing on the show is a combination of things. But one thing I really like is lists. I love lists, top 3s, top 10s, top 5s, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that you can look forward to. In addition to that, we're at the point of the season now where everything is horrible. So, some guys don't like to talk about the draft this early. I don't care. I'm talking about drafts. I'm talking about replacement for coaches. Dude, we're 1-7. This thing is only getting worse and worse and worse. So every week, I'm talking about a combination of those things. Maybe I'll just mention a draft prospect. Maybe I'll just mention a potential replacement for Mayhew, a potential replacement for Caldwell. But every week, you're going to hear something because this team doesn't deserve just a look at the game. It doesn't deserve just a look at specific players. We got to start looking at replacements because it's time for a lot of them to get lost. It's time for a lot of them to pack their bags. So speaking of the draft, we're sitting there at the moment, we'd have the number 1 pick. You know, if things go the way we're projecting them, it's going to be us right there. Some people are saying the Bears might be in the mix, San Francisco 49ers. But as of right now, we have the number 1 pick in the draft. With the first pick in the NFL draft, the Lions select. Now, there's a couple of options out there. Quarterback, I would stay away from with the number 1 pick for a number of reasons. Like I said, Stafford, I don't have a lot of hope in him. I have a little bit of hope. Now, if there was an Andrew Luck, if there was, even how we felt about Alex Smith when he came out, if there was even like a Carson Palmer, how we felt about him, or even a Cam Newton, I say, okay, let's go ahead and do it at number 1. But this year, I just don't see it. You got Goff, you got Connor Cook, a few other guys. I don't think quarterback is a hot spot. Unfortunately, it's a weak draft. And that's another thing that kind of pisses me off about the Lions. They don't even pick the right years to lose. They don't even pick the right year when you can get that hot name coach that may be available, or it's a strong draft class. No, even the year when we were 4-12, that was considered a weaker draft class. We had a top 5 pick. They don't even pick the right years to lose. All that being said, it's a little bit weaker of a draft class, but there's one guy who I would say no matter what draft class you're looking at, he'd be in top 5 discussion. He'd be in top 3 discussion. That's Laramie Tunsil from Ole Miss. Now, for starters, his name scares me because, Tunsil, you can turn that into an evil nickname. I think one of the worst offensive lineman nicknames you can have is Turnstile. His name is really close to Turnstile, but all jokes aside, when it comes to the actual talent, this guy has it. They're comparing him to Orlando Pace. He's a left tackle like Orlando Pace, and he's definitely going to be there, available. And if we're picking at 1, 2, or 3, depending on what other teams do, he should be there. Now, if we're picking at number 1, you pick him. You got Joey Bosa, you got Robert Kimdichie. There's some solid guys, but I'm really liking what this kid can do. Again, Laramie Tunsil, offensive tackle, Ole Miss. This is one of the guys I'm kind of looking at. Now, speaking of the draft, Martin Mayhew. Now, we talked about Jim Caldwell. We talked about Matt Stafford, who we want to see stay, who we want to see go. This guy, he gets it once, he gets it twice. We can hit that thing, 1,000 times. Martin Mayhew, man, I get lost for words sometimes. When you look at that draft history, that one year, he really fooled us because 2013 was solid. But after that, man, it's so ugly. Eric Ebron and all the players that could have been drafted instead of him, all these future Hall of Famers, it seems like, that were drafted after him. But he's still on the team. You look at 11 and you look at 12, these guys aren't here anymore. Mayhew, man, there was a guy that came out, he hit me up on Twitter and he asked me who were some good replacements. We're not going to get into too many guys right now, but there's a ton of guys that come to mind. We're going to talk about them soon, not today. Mayhew, you're on notice. You're off the hook slightly today. We have a few other things to talk about, but just be sure, be rest assured, we're going to be talking about you, and we certainly want to see you out of here. We certainly want to see the bye happen to you, and it just has to happen sooner rather than later. I don't think a firing of a GM really happens too much mid-season, so for him, it will probably be during the offseason. Now, like I said, some of you asked me some questions. There's several forums you can reach me. We're going to get into the listener questions at this time. Again, Twitter, at Jerry Mallory NFL. This is where you can reach me on Twitter, at Jerry Mallory NFL. I'll be setting up a group me for wide distribution soon. And again, the email is Hindsight20. That's HINDSIGHT. I don't even have notes, man. I had to think about that. It's been a while since I had to spell something that, that profound. I'm not in middle school anymore. But Hindsight20, 20, then podcast, Hindsight20podcast at gmail.com. So let's go ahead and get into the question segment at this time. We got 4 questions. There were many more. I want to thank you for tweeting and leaving them on GroupMe and all the other forums. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. You're probably sick of hearing my voice, so we have the assistance and help of the lovely Telly. Telly, take it away. What's the first question you got for me?
This one is from Twitter at MotownMania81. He asks, if Caldwell is fired, who do you see taking over?
Thanks for that one, Motown. I'm assuming he's talking about during the season, because if he's fired in the offseason, I mean, there's a ton of options. Now, if he's fired during the season, I think the obvious answer is Terrell Austin, or Terrible Austin, because he's been pretty bad this year, but he would be the guy next in line. Now, Jim Caldwell, would I fire him during the season? Yes, certainly I would. Does he have someone here that's an adequate replacement? I don't believe so. Terrell Austin would be the replacement. I don't think he's an adequate replacement, but he's probably the best thing that we have going. So to answer that in short, I'm going to say Terrell Austin would be the replacement. I don't think we're looking at a guy that with the last 8 games, or maybe he got 6 or 7 games, could save his job. And the horrible thing is, because the narrative on Terrell Austin was he'd be a head coach maybe in a year or two. The way he was trending, the way the defense was playing, well, all that's out the window. A few guys leave, a few injuries, the defense is looking horrible, and that is his scheme. So as much praise as he got last year, I don't think we're talking enough about how bad of a job he's doing and his individual players are doing. But thanks for that question. Telly, take it away. What's the next one?
Next is from Aaron using the GroupMe app. Is this defense lacking just because of Levy?
That's a good question, Aaron, and I thought about this one for a second. There's several factors. I'm looking at 4 key components. It's not just Levy, but he's a huge piece. The 4 guys I'm looking at as to why this defense went from one of the best all time. Guys, you have to keep in mind, from a statistical standpoint, this was one of the best defenses of all time in the NFL, especially so in the run defense department. So to go from one of the best all time to one of the worst, I mean, I'm talking about atrocious. I'm talking about laughingstock. I'm talking about 08 Lions. How do you go from A to B that quickly? There's 4 guys. DeAndre Levy, yes, from the standpoint of tight end coverage, from the standpoint of being that second line of defense, the linebacking core, he's a main culprit. Number 2 is Ndamukong Suh. When people were to ask me how this team was going to do this year, I would give an opinion. I would always have a caveat, though. I would always say, but losing Suh, we really don't know what this defense is going to look like. See, Suh not only was a great player, he was always on the field. He didn't play 100% of the snaps, but he was never hurt. His impact, whether it be taking up a double team, or whether it be filling up the stat sheets, was always felt. Every game. Even if he didn't have the best game, he still got double teamed. So I always had that caveat, we don't know 100% what this team will look like on defense without Suh. Now, granted, we've had bad defenses with Suh on the team. Last year was the first year that the defense was dominant with Suh at the toe. That being said, though, losing a guy like that left so much unknown. He's such a key figure. He's such a cog in the defense. You lose him, we don't know what this defense could look like. Well, we're getting a good idea with losing him as well as losing Levy for what looks like it's going to be the rest of the season, has this defense looking like. Now, there's 2 other factors to this. They're both on the field. They're both looking horrible. We're going to start with James Ahedebo. Now, James Ahedebo had a pretty good year last year. It wasn't the whole season, though. You look at the final stats, you say, yeah, he had a really good 2014. The majority of that success was the first 8 to 10 games. Toward the end of the year, he started to look bad. And I hate to say it, he started to show his true colors. Now, there's a reason he was a free agent. There's a reason why he didn't garner that much interest. Not a great player. He played above probably what he normally is, and that was what we saw. But the normal James Ahedebo, the James Ahedebo that was kind of a journeyman that is kind of hot and cold, that's the James Ahedebo that's here this year. And so our safety tandem, they've lost so much. The funny thing is, though, you remember in the offseason, he wanted to cash in on that 1 year. And that's good for him. Go get your money, threatening to hold out, wanting to get paid accordingly. Dude, well, you didn't get the money, and now you're looking horrible. I want to see what Issa Abdul-Quddus could do. I think it's time to make some changes, because every time I'm looking at Ahedebo on the field, he's missing a tackle. Yeah, he'll have a good tackle here or there, but he's one of the 4 cogs. So you got Levy, Suh, Ahedebo, and then there's Rasheem Mathis. Now, Rasheem Mathis is old, man. I mean, what do you want from this guy? he's old. And the issue is not with him. He's doing the best he can. The issue is with the team, not being proactive, not looking for a replacement, not saying, well, let's get someone else as a starting cornerback before the bottom falls out. Because the bottom was going to fall out with this guy. He's been in the league for so long. How old is he? 35, 36? You knew it was going to happen. It wasn't if, it was when. So why not bring in another guy? Be proactive, another veteran that if Mathis falls off, we can slide him right in. Or these two guys, the other veteran that you bring in, if you're smart and proactive, Martin Mayhew and Mathis are kind of going one-on-one in training camp. I'm pretty sure whoever that other guy was, and by veteran, I mean, in the league 5 or 6 years, but not like 40 years old like Mathis is, maybe like a 28-year-old or 29-year-old veteran. I'm pretty sure that guy would have beat Mathis out during training camp, during the preseason, and if he didn't, he certainly would have beat him out during the regular season. Those 4 things, those 4 pieces, to me, is why the defense is struggling. Not just Levy, but he's a huge part. So thanks for that question. Telly, what do you got for us for the third question?
Here's another group me question from Theron. Why can't they throw the ball deep to Calvin?
Thanks for that one, Theron. It's deeper than that. No pun intended. When you're looking at Calvin Johnson, now, if I was to ask someone, why is the deep ball not being thrown to Calvin? I think some of the more common answers would be the offensive coordinator, Matt Stafford, and the offensive line not giving them enough time to throw the ball deep. The coordinator not drawing up deep plays. Stafford, for whatever reason, not getting it to him. And all those things are factors why the deep ball isn't being thrown to Calvin. But here's one that a lot of people aren't talking about. Here's one that we also need to consider. It's Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson's a great player. No, he isn't a great player anymore. Calvin Johnson was a great player. And that's what we have to start to realize. He's not the best receiver in the league. He's not even a top 5 receiver anymore. Now, top 10, yeah, I still put him in that category. But when you're watching these games, and hey, God bless Calvin. You love the guy. He's been a fixture on this team for so long. Everyone gets old. Everyone gets to the point where their skills start to diminish. Calvin's still a great receiver. No, change the narrative. He's still a good receiver, okay? That's what I want to hear. Now, you watch these games, he's not getting the separation first and foremost. When the deep ball is thrown to him, he isn't 5 yards, 2-3 yards even behind the guy. No, he's step by step with the guy. Sometimes he hasn't ran past him. So that's one issue. Number 2, he's not high pointing the ball anymore. But wait, Jerry, what about against Minnesota? Yeah, that was one time. The other deep balls that were thrown to him, look at that Chicago game. He jumped up and caught it, but he's doing more of a box a guy out and kind of jump. He's not high pointing because it looks like his speed and his vertical have started to decline. So, you're not looking at vintage Calvin. And with that being said, this is why the deep ball isn't being thrown to him as much. You're looking and he's not open. You're looking and there's a guy step by step with him. And yes, in the rare occasion that he does run by a guy, the offensive line isn't giving Stafford enough time to throw it. Stafford isn't being accurate enough to give it to him. So there's a huge mess there. There's a number of reasons why. And yes, the offensive line, the scheme, and Stafford are part of it. But I want us to be more informed. I want us to be better as a group of Lions fans. We have to include this. I love Calvin too. We have to include that Calvin is great. No, wait, he's not great. He is not great anymore. We got one more question. Telly, take it away.
Lastly, it's at RoyalPMR4 on Twitter. Who is most likely to lose a job next on the Lions?
Pretty good question. Common question. I mean, it would have to be Jim Caldwell. If Martha Ford is the one doing the firings, if she's the one, the Grim Reaper with the sickle in her hand, she's starting from the bottom, working her way up. So they took care of a coordinator. I don't think they'll go with another coordinator. I don't think Terrell Austin would be next. It would have to be Jim Caldwell. Plain and simple. You know what's after that, though? It's Mayhew, then Lewan, or Mayhew and Lewan, however you want to word it. But the next guy that will get the axe, in my opinion, will be Jim Caldwell. The question is, will it happen this year during the season, or will we wait till the offseason? I'm starting to think it's going to be during the offseason. But it depends, man. At 1-7, this thing can get worse and worse and worse, and people stop coming to the stadium, and the paper bags start to fly. It could happen during the regular season. I want to thank everyone for your questions. Like I said, hit me up on Hindsight 20 Hindsight 20 Podcast. I'm still getting used to it too. Work with me. Hindsight 20 Podcast at gmail.com and Jerry Mallory NFL on Twitter. Now, there was a series of guys that kind of asked some questions that were they were bewildered questions, and I liked them. You had Sam Wilkinson, known as Coda. He pretty much said what's going on with the team. You had a guy named Putty on Twitter. Even a guy that was entitled The Point of Life saying, why? Simply why? You guys are reaching that phase, and I'm kind of there too. It's a little bit of apathy and it's a little bit of bewilderment. And as a fan base, we're sitting there and it's like, what's going on, man? Because we expected so much more from this team. Even for the people that said they would struggle, you would hear 6 wins, 5 wins. Oh, they're going to have a down year, 7 wins. I don't think there was a ton of people. And if you were, kudos to you. There wasn't a ton of people saying 2 wins, 3 wins, but that's where we're at. So guys like Coda and Putty and The Point of Life on Twitter, you're bewildered. So when you say why, and when you say what's going on, or why is this happening, or can we beat a Pee Wee football team? We're reaching that stage of apathy. We're reaching that stage of bewilderment. It's happening. It's setting in, and yes, it is very sad. Now, I want to talk to you guys about something. It's this team. And as bad as they are, why? Why come back? Because as I'm sitting there watching this thing, I'm like, dude, I got a brand new podcast. Everything's starting off for the first time. They're 1-7. Well, I'll tell you this much. You look on that field, some guys are giving full effort. Some guys aren't. The team product as a whole, it's pretty bad. Some of you will watch the rest of the season. Some of you might stop watching. I think a lot of you will watch here and there. I'll tell you this much. Week in, week out, I'm giving you full effort. Week in, week out, I'm going to do my best to entertain you. In fact, if you don't watch the game, that's even better. Dial us up, hit us up, so you can see or hear about what happened. Interviews, opinions, it's all going to be there. We're going to have some fun with this thing. The Lions aren't bringing the fun. They aren't bringing the entertainment. We're going to have to do it as a fan base, as a listenership. That's pretty much what I can promise and guarantee to you. Enjoyment. We'll talk about replacements. We'll talk about, hey, who should stay, who should go. I promise you this much. The product on the field will probably be bad. I can't promise you exactly how bad, but it'll be pretty bad. I can promise you that I will give you a quality product. We'll have a lot of fun with it, okay? And so that's kind of like my closing comments for today's show. I want to thank all of you, though. It's been a while since I've done this long form. It's going to be a long road this season. I mean, it would have been great to be talking about them at 6-2, even at 4-4. But no, we're here at 1-7. But guess what? We're here at 1-7. However, we got a lot to do as a fan base, as a listenership. I think some heads may roll. There's going to be some candidates being bantied about. There's plenty to talk about. There's plenty to be entertained with. Again, Jerry Mallory NFL. Hindsight 20 Podcast at gmail.com. If you have a question, a comment, concern, we're going to have some interviews on here. This thing is going to be fun, man. The Lions, we've been here before. We can sit here and say this is new and this is unfamiliar territory, but it's not. However, each and every time it happens, there's a new wrinkle, there's a new aspect. The apathy keeps growing more and more. This is going to be an interesting season, and for all the wrong reasons. Hey, guys, I'm out of here. The first show is in the books. I'm a little parched. I'm about to go grab me a water, sit back, relax. We'll be back next Monday. No game. It's the bye week, perhaps the good bye week, as some players may be going bye-bye. No, I don't think there'll be any trades. But in terms of coaching, in terms of maybe even GM, it could definitely be a good bye week. Thank you for listening. Jerry Mallory NFL on Twitter. Hindsight 20 Podcast at gmail.com. Again, this has been the Hindsight 20 Podcast. I'm your host, Jerry Mallory. I'll talk to you guys next Monday.